right, fellas, Hot Rod Reverend here. Time for us to get this exhaust manifold out and do a little bit of electrolysis. So let's take a look at what we're going to do. All right, so this is the exhaust manifold in question. Awfully rusty, you can tell there. A good one though, B9 AE. That's the B series for the 50s, non-B 1959. And then this thing here is just rusted up, locked up to the manifold itself, that little spacer there. And I really didn't even want to fool with trying to take that nut off just because of how rough it is. Now I could heat this up, obviously, to get those parts off. I could blast this with sand or glass beads, but I decided just to do this just to have a little bit of fun here. So I've got my tote, and I've already got, I don't know, about a cup of borax in there. And we're going to use some of that and then fill this up with water. And I've got sacrificial scrap metal, and what we'll do when we get it, get the exhaust manifold in the water, the scrap metal in the water, make sure they're not touching each other, and we'll hook it to a low voltage and make sure that the negative lead is on the exhaust manifold and that the positive lead is on the scrap metal. That's the way that the juice flows. And since the juice flows that way, all those particles of rust will transfer to the scrap metal. So let's get moving. And here we go. A little cup of borax is all pretty quickly, so we're going to put in just about one more cup. And we're almost there. And we're just going to put this in here. Good. Fits real nice, just the way that we want it to there. Submerged up to the down pipe. And then we'll get our sacrificial metal right here. Pop that in. You want to make sure it's not touching. And then we're going to hook up our leads. Okay, on my unit, there is no off and on. Basically, there's a 2 amp, 10 amp, and 50 amp setting. I like the 10 amp setting. It tends to be pretty aggressive with cast iron, especially exhaust manifolds like these. So we're hooked up over here to the sacrificial metal, and then we're going to take and hook up this side over here to the exhaust manifold. And once we do so, we're going to take a look at what's going on and see if we can start to see anything moving from one end to the other. Of course, it could be that this is just so rusty. This is pretty rusty, but I don't know if you can tell. If you look real close, you can see that there are particles moving from this side, where the exhaust manifold is at, to the sacrificial metal. And you see kind of the water taking that path. We'll see what happens here. We'll give it an hour, and then we'll check it and find out where we're at. By that time, we should see some kind of movement of the rust to the other side of the container where this blasted sheet metal's at. All right, so it's only been 20 minutes, but you can tell, look down there at the bottom and stuff, and you can tell how this exhaust manifold is starting to turn a little black. It just means that the rust, you know, the iron's really starting to show up really good, but the rust is leaving and going over here to that piece of sheet metal. So I imagine if we let it go all night, we should be looking pretty good. So we'll let this go for 12 hours, see where we stand. All right, so we'll let this go overnight. And here it is early in the morning, so got my wire brush with me here. And we're going to turn this off first and plug the leads, take it out, and see what it looks like. All right, so let's pull this out. See how it's turned kind of black? That's all that, get rid of all that rust. And tell too how the spacer still has some rust on it in different places, but we'll take the wire brush to it it just, man, it looks pretty good. That's what I thought it was. So basically, if there's any rust on there, anything loose, you just take this to it and it really does a good job. Now, the reason that the spacer is still rusty is because of the gasket material there. And because there's nothing metal touching the spacer, you know, that's probably why. It's probably rather doing work on the spacer. But this is really good, comparatively speaking. But I'm going to turn off the camera and get my hose over here and spray all this down, brush it off, and I may spin it around, put it back into the tub after I clean it out, and give it one more round here, maybe 4 or 5 more hours, see what it does. All right, so we brushed it off and flipped around the sacrificial metal piece. The other side's bare, so flip that around because basically it's almost a line of sight kind of idea, and you can just tell. You look down in there, the bubbles coming off. That's all the rust and corrosion making its way over here to the positive side of what's in solution. So, but anyway, we'll let this go. I'll come home from work this afternoon and give it a final rinse, dry it off, and see where we're at. It's been about an hour. You can tell the sacrificial metal is getting nice and black, and a lot of the corrosion is moving that way. But you can also see that there's a whole lot more rust particles and everything moving around in here. It's kind of pretty defined, but since I flipped this exhaust manifold around, and it's kind of the principle of the corrosion, the rust moving from a negative to positive in solution with the electric charge, is that a line of sight is usually best. So since the exhaust ports are open for the manifold there, a whole lot more rust is coming off from the inside now since I flipped around the angle. So we'll let this go, and we'll take a look at it this afternoon one more time. It'll probably this session here will be the end of it. A little bit after lunch, and you can tell just by looking through here that there's still movement in there, still corrosion coming off. We're going to go ahead and take it out, just double check real quick. I might leave it a little bit longer. Some of that rust coming out of there could be coming out from the inside of the manifold, which would not be a surprise. If you take a look inside the port there, you'll see there's still some rust inside. So I'm going to leave this in for a couple more hours just to see what happens next. After a couple more hours, we've got a little rust puddle. It's forming there on the top, and I'm sure that's because of the rust that's been taken off the spacer. You can still see the bubbles and what's in the water in the solution there, just moving back and forth and stuff. But at any rate, let's go ahead and shut this off and take it out and give it a final rinse. First up, you can see how bad the sacrificial metal looks. And of course, the top where the oxygen hits it, it just starts rusting up. So we're gonna spray that off first, but we can reuse that after we put that in the food cabinet. Next up is to take out the manifold. And you can see the number I started doing on that spacer. That water is nasty. See how loose everything is. You can tell just how much the corrosion comes off and hits the sacrificial metal just by all the junk that's on the sheet metal plate here. And then you can also tell how much it leaves by the black color of the cast iron. So obviously you're going to want to dry this as soon as you can. You don't want to leave it wet. So I'm going to get out an air hose, dry it off, and then let it dry in the sun. Then we'll come back and take a look at the finished product. All right, you can tell I really got cleaned up in places, and other places not so much. I probably could have done one more bath with it, but at any rate, it's a whole lot better than it was. You can tell too right there at the top, or will be the bottom of the manifold, but the other areas got cleaned up pretty good. But anyway, principles there for us. All right, next up is to heat up that nut, take that sucker off, and then most probably I'm going to have to heat up the spacer, or the heat riser, and take that sucker off next. Then after that, I'll probably throw it in the blast cabinet just a little bit, just to clean it a little bit here and there. Still got some rust showing. One more thing, check this out. Yep, we got it off, but I'm afraid boogered up the stud there. So that's the way it goes, man. These things are rusted in there big time. Of course, like I said before, it's pretty loose and ready to go. But I guarantee you the spacer is kind of seized up to those studs. Not so much to the manifold, but it's going to be interesting getting that loosened up. But we're going to do what we can here and try to heat up both sides and go from there. Okay, we put it in the cabinet for just a little bit, just to knock off some of the loose rust and some of the other debris. Try to get into those studs, which is the real issue. Those studs have corroded to that spacer. So we're going to try a chisel first between the two, the manifold itself and the spacer. We're going to loosen it up, hopefully with a little bit of penetrant. And after that, we'll apply the heat. If you look closely right around the stud's outer diameter, you can tell with that rust blasted away, it looks like we can get some penetrant in between the stud and the spacer, and see what we can do with that to loosen it up. Okay, well, after 15-20 minutes of that, we're going to give up on that and go ahead and use my cutoff wheel to get in there and just cut the stud. And we've got enough room in there. Shouldn't harm anything, should be fine. But man, it's ridiculous. This thing's on there good. All right, we cut through the other side. And still bring this thing up pretty simply. We hope. Okay, when I cut the second one, it just kind of fell right off. So anyway, next step is to see if we can put this in the vise and try to tap out these bolts, these studs, from the bottom side here, from the side you're looking at. I guess that's the top side, I don't know, yeah. And try to salvage this spacer if we can. And then of course, we're gonna have to put the smack down on our manifold by drilling these out. I hate that, but there's nothing else really I think I could have done with this job. But hopefully I won't damage any threads and have to put any inserts or anything in it. Okay, so there's the first stud tapped out. I just went on the underside, flipped it up, and then did a number on that booger. So now to go to the other side, but you can tell just how much corrosion there is in there, man. And here's stud number 2. Up top, you can tell the penetrant never made it. Well, I guess on the one side it finally met up, but that could have been because it slid through. But Shoot, man, these things are rough. Well, this little bugger's been a whole lot more trouble than it's worth, most probably. But anyway, I finally got drilled out the one stud. It's running the tap all the way through. And then this one offset a little bit on me. I tried to get a bolt in there and weld the bolt to the rest of the leftover stud and pull it out, but boy, that didn't work. So at least I got one side just about done here. It taps all the way through, and we'll get the other side, and this will be a manifold we can salvage. Okay, we just got through running a tap to the other one as well. So both holes are clean, ready to go, and I'm going to do a little bit of light blasting, make sure that surface is smooth. All right, guys, we're back at it again here. You can see that there's some corrosion in here. I'm gonna take a flat disc to it. I did toss it in the blast cabinet a little bit just to get some of the flash rust off, but it's looking really, really good. The flanges look nice, as you can see. So we're gonna get that corrosion off of there and put in the cabinet just one more time and make it look a little bit nicer, and we'll be good to go. Hey, you may be wondering how I know I'm taking off some of the corrosion and not the original cast iron part. Don't know if you could tell right here, but you can see the corrosion underneath of the leftover gasket and some of the metal that just kind of corroded and rust welded to the original casting. It's a whole lot darker. So once I take that off and just kind of carefully watch that, you can see just the circumference here. Getting that cleaned up so that you get a good seal when you go to reinstall this exhaust manifold. All right, fellas, we got this pretty well cleaned up. You can tell from looking at this surface. It's very, very nice. Straight edge to it, sharp. And retap the threads on this and the studs, ready to go, brand new and nice. Flanges look really good, so I'm just going to clean up a little bit here in the cabinet, not much, but still a little bit of surface rust in places. But don't mind the other stuff I've got in the cabinet here, but that's the way it goes. Kind of like indirect blasting when you got some other parts in there. Give a second for the air compressor to turn off. Let me talk to you real quick. All right, fellas. One thing to remember here when you're using a blast cabinet, I don't know what you do and what your protocols are, but I encourage you to be safe. Obviously, I've got a trigger controlled gun in here, not foot operated. I like to have foot operated control, but anyway, I don't know if you noticed what I did. What I did was I turned the valve off for my air supply before I opened the cabinet door. And then I reached in and yanked the trigger just to release all the pressure. That way when I open up this door, I'm safe as far as messing with anything in here. And even if I accidentally nudge the trigger, it doesn't matter. It's not under pressure. So safety's sake, you want to keep your eyesight. All right, guys, just want to look at this real quick and show you how this thing turned out. Really good. It's nice. Just checking out all these flanges, make sure there's no apparent cracks, and everything looked as original as it could. And then, of course, you could see where I did have to drill out the old studs, retap, and then I got a set of new studs here. And I got two different links. The shorter links, if somebody wanted to use just the flange and knock out the riser, the heat spacer, and then of course the longer one that will fit the heat spacer and the downpipe as well. So when I sell this, I'll have all this available. It's the right original threads that Ford used. This is a 59 B9AE. So these are the larger passages inside of here for the manifold, and this turned out pretty nice. This is pretty much ready to be coated. I'd wash it first before I did that, just the glass beads and stuff. But what I like to use is Eastwood's high temp coating, something that resembles stainless steel. And of course, you do have to cure this after you paint it. I use like a sponge brush all over the manifold here. I'm not going to do that with this one. I'll probably just sell it as is, bare. That way it doesn't look like I'm trying to hide anything. People can just see exactly what it looks like. But I do like this stuff. I know some guys will ceramic coat, which of course you could do. But if you did that, you'd want to smooth all this out, I'd imagine. All the pock marks and everything else from cast iron. But a little bit of work, but all in all, I'm glad we saved it. And I'll be listing this pretty soon on my website.